about history. And they asked me, where should I start? And I said, start at the beginning. So, what is history? What is history? Yeah.
It tells about our past.
It tells about our past. History tells about our past. So, for example, if you come in today and you tell me about what went on in the last weekend, is that history?
I guess it could. Not really.
Well, you guess, but not really. What's the not really part?
Doesn't it have to be like really long ago for it to be history?
No.
No? Okay, well then yes, the answer.
Okay. But you are missing an important point. History, to be history, has to be written down. So, technically it's not. History is the written record or written story of people. Now, each word in that definition is important. History is a written record. It has to be written down. Why? Why would it have to be written down? Come on, girls. Why would it have to be written down? So somebody else can know about it. Exactly. If you tell what happened last weekend to him, and he tells it to him, he tells it to her, and she tells it to me, and I say the story out loud, what might be wrong with that story? Huh? It's not written down, but have you ever played telephone?
Yes.
All right. So you know what happens after something gets verbally handed down from one person to the next person to the next person. It changes. Why? Because each person puts it in their own words. Each person, he said something happened. Oh, I think he was talking. Let's say he's telling him that he went hunting, and he shot a deer, and he only shot the deer because he tripped and fell, and the gun went off, and the deer died. He didn't even aim at it. He just tripped and fell, and that's what happened. So he tells him that he went hunting, and he tripped and fell, and shot something. Oh, it was a squirrel. And he tells him that he went hunting, and he tripped and fell, and he missed. By the time he comes back, he could be saying that he went bear hunting in Arkansas, and because people add details and they forget other things, and the story is totally different. So that's why it has to be written down. Because if it's written down, then we know these are the details, and everybody can see it, and it gets passed down exactly the same way. Now, it's possible, and this used to be the case before everybody knew how to read and write way back, or they even had reading and writing, that people would memorize things. And this was mostly with literature. Someone would tell a fantastic story, like the Odyssey. Have any of you ever read Patrick Collins' about your age group? He writes. Okay, you watched the movie The Odyssey. The Iliad, he wrote 2 books, The Iliad and The Odyssey. But these were stories that have been passed down from generation to generation to generation from really a long time before. He just wrote them down. The stories had not changed very much because at that time, stories were really, really good. They were often sung. You know, you had minstrels who would sing things, and the songs were always the same. You learn a song, you usually repeat it exactly the same way. You don't add new words to it. You don't, change things in it. And the same thing with them. They used to memorize things and pass them down. They weren't because they were the same, because they were memorized, and it was important he was in charge. He would teach his son, and his son would then pass it down and it was memorized. So by the time it got to Homer and he wrote it down, it was pretty much the same as before. But there are other stories in literature that have been changed. For example, you all know the story of Cinderella? I bet the story you know is different than the one I know. I know about 5 or 6 different stories of Cinderella. Because almost every culture in Europe has a story of Cinderella, and they're all different. I think in Scandinavia she's called Ashbuttle. Because she lived in the ashes. The only thing they all seem to have in common is there was a girl who was treated badly by her godmother, not her godmother, her stepmother. She spent her time almost like a slave in the house, slept in the ashes. They all love that part of the story because that statement she's in the ashes in all of them. She goes to a ball, somehow, usually magic or godmother is involved in that part of it, meets a prince who gets married, and that's it, okay? Some of the stories are very bloody.
Yeah, like there was one how the sisters to fit their shoes.
Cut off their toes so they healed. That's the Grimm version. Grimm had a way of, he collected a lot of stories, and he especially seemed to like the really bloody ones, but then they were guys, So, but almost every culture has a story of Cinderella, but they all most of them have different names for her and different things that happen to her, and the stories change. They have some basic things that are true, the same, but the rest of it changes. Now that's in literature. You get into history, you don't want things you don't want differences. So you have to be very exact. So history is a written record, a written story. And when we say story, in modern day culture, when you say a story, most people think something that's made up. It's a myth, or it's a legend. It's not true. No, a story can be true, and it should be true. So history is a story, and I'm not going to say a true story, but a story of people. Of one person, yes. Of a family, yes. Of a city, yes. Of a country, yes. Of the world, yes. It doesn't matter as long as it's people. There are family stories, and there are family histories. There are histories for cities. There are histories for states. If you go to college, I had to take Louisiana state history. In New York, I had to teach the 6th graders, 7th graders, New York state history, because it's important to know about your state. And then you learn about your country. You take U.S. history, and then you take world history. And then it's good to know about the world in general. So there's lots of histories, but all of them involve people. We do not write histories about deer, or squirrels, or roses. You can read how roses were developed, but it's usually people who develop those roses. All the different hybrids and things. You're still talking about people. And yes, we know about God. We have histories. We have church history. Again, it's the story of the church. We have Old Testament history, the history of the world before the coming of Christ. And that's what we're going to get into. So, why is history important? Why do we learn history? Why is it important? The girls are going to be quiet today. I don't know what you guys do all the talking. Come on, why is it important? Why do you think it's important? Why do you think it's important to know what people did 100 years ago? Huh? So you can do it? If it was good, yes, so you can do it. What if it was bad? So you don't do it. Yeah, that's why we study history, is to learn from it. I have so many times kids in school, mostly these are high schoolers who think they know everything anyway. And they say, why do we have to study this stuff? These people are dead. You study it so you can learn from it. Problem is, most people don't learn from it. I had my college history teacher said, we study history so we can learn from it, and what we've learned from history is that we have learned nothing from history. Why? Because we do the same stupid things over and over and over again, even though we know it's wrong. And you will see this in history. As you study history, you will see some idiot like Napoleon try to invade Russia and lose his whole army because the Russians have what's called the Russian winter. It's a terrible thing. And his army froze to death. Most of it. So, you would think that if you're the leader of a country, you would know you don't want to take your army into Russia in the wintertime, right? If that's what you should have learned from that, Hitler didn't learn from that. He figured, well, okay, so we now have machines, we have tanks, we're not going in on horses or walking. We have tanks and we have, vehicles. We can get in there faster, we can get in and get out before the Russian winter comes. Vehicles do not work well when the oil freezes. And he met the Russian winter and it totally ruined his army as well. So we don't learn, we don't always learn from history. Some people think they know better. But there is a lot to learn from history. History isn't a circle. It's a spiral. Yeah, all right, so here's Russian winter. Okay, so we're not going to do that again. We do it a little differently. This time we do it with tanks and mechanized vehicles. The next time we need another vehicle, the oil won't freeze. It's never exactly the same. We do the things over again, but not quite exactly the same as we did before. So, and the other thing you need to understand about history is that because history is the story of people, you also need to know a little bit about lots of other things. When you study history, you will also have to study a little bit of geography. Why? Why would you have to know anything about geography? If I'm studying Louisiana state history, I have to learn a lot about geography. Because I have to know, yeah.
So you can know
Where the things happened. Why did it happen there? Why was the Battle of New Orleans where it took place?
because it was to be.
Huh?
That's where the general chose it to be.
Why that particular place?
Maybe
Because the British wanted New Orleans. But why did they attack? Why didn't they attack from the river? Why did they attack through the swamps?
Maybe because it would give them
Because they couldn't get to the river because of the New Orleans did have a boat there and would bombard anybody coming up the river. So they're going to come overland, but they have to come through the swamp. And Jackson knew that there's only one place they can come through the swamp without losing all their guys. They're gonna come up through the lake, and then they're gonna unload here, and they're gonna go overland here. And so he set up his line of defense, knowing exactly where the best place for them to cross, and the only place for them to come. He was still facing overwhelming odds, but Jackson knew his land, and he knew where to put his defenses so that the enemy had a hard time. And they weren't used to the swamps of Louisiana. So you have to know a little bit of geography, because you have to understand the situation as you're reading the story. Sometimes you have to study a little bit of geology. Geology is the study of rocks. Why would you have to know anything about rocks? Huh? Why would you? Well, geography is the study of rocks. It also studies other things that affect rocks. And you'll see that we will be looking at a lot of geology. How did these rocks get here? Rocks tell stories. Yes, yes. You need to understand a little bit about climate. I don't mean climate change, but climate, because it affects areas like flooding or hurricanes. Some hurricanes have changed the number of battles. The Armada, when the Spain sent an armada to try and conquer England, it was lost because of a storm, basically a hurricane. So we have to look a little bit at climate and religion and your neighbors, the people who live around you. So there are other things you have to look at, and all of these influence your civilization, your art, and your culture. And those are things we're going to want to look at too. So the first thing, your assignment, your homework, this is going to be due a month from now. Don't think you're going to just sit down, wait until the end and do it then. A month from now, I want you to make a family history, a history of your family. Now these are the rules. These are the rules. You have to tell me a story about your family. I want you to investigate the past of your family. I don't mean go all the way back to when they landed at Plymouth Rock. Or came over from Europe. I just mean your immediate family, your mother, your father, your grandparents, just a little bit about your close family. You don't have to go back further than your grandparents. You can if you want to, I don't have a problem with that. You have to make a written record of what you discover. The record has to be in nice handwriting, or printing for those of you who've never learned to handwrite, with correct spelling. You can also type it. I don't have a problem with that. Some of you I know can't do anything without typing it. And you have a month to do it. Now these are the other rules. You have to know what you write down. You have to either know it firsthand, in other words, you were there, you saw it, you witnessed it. Or it was told to you from a reliable person. So you can trust what your parents and your grandparents tell you because they witnessed it. So all that you write down, yes?
What is the age when it's like, I'm going to do it, but like, let's take my sister, for example, she's still learning how to write, and so like, what's the age limit?
What do you mean the age limit?
Like everyone in this room has to do it. I'm going to do it, but like, I have a sister who's still learning
Everybody
how to
in this
write.
room is going to do it. And I don't, which one is your sister?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I know you have trouble. But you can get help. I have no problem with you getting all the information together and then getting somebody to help you write it out. I have no problem with that, as long as you do all the work. except the actual writing. That's why I'm letting some of you type this, because to me that's cheating too, but I know some of you have that. One, if you're handwriting it, it needs to be at least 5 pages. If you're typing it, it has to be 3 or more. It can be more. It can't be less than that. 5 pages, handwritten, come on. And I don't mean both sides, just 5 pages. Are we typing or handwritten? No, not double spaced, every line. But you only have to do one, I'm talking about one side of the page, not necessarily both sides. And you also need to make a family tree. The first page, and that does not count as your 3 or your 5 pages, that's an extra page. And I'll give you, if you download the lesson, there's examples of what family trees look like. It can be as simple as simply putting lines. This is, you know what a family tree is? Does anybody not know what a family tree is? Your family tree, your family looks like a tree. Your parents are like the main trunk. You are the roots. All the children that come from that are the roots. Your parents each have 2 parents, so there's 4 branches. And each of them had 2 parents, so now you got 8 branches. That's why it's called a tree, because it keeps going up and about out. You can make it, you can draw a tree if you want, and put all in the branches. You can put just pictures of your people. Or you can just draw lines. Here's mom and dad, and there's 2 lines, and those 2 are connected. From them, there are 6 children, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and just put their names. The year of their birth is nice, but I'm not asking you to do that. I'm just asking you for names. And then you draw lines to their grandparents, and then lines to, if you're putting the great-grandparents. I'm only asking you really for 3 generations.
Are we only just do like your family right now, or like your grandparents?
I would like you to put your grandparents in, but your family right now and your grandparents is really all I want.
Can it be like something that they discovered?
Anything you can want to tell me anything about them, I don't care. As long as it happened. It has to be true. It has to be true. All right. So,
That's a historical fact.
what's a historical fact?
One of my uncles was called great-great-uncles was exploded in World War II.
Well, that's true. How they died is important. It's important to you. It should be.